Welcome back, guys. Let's get right into it. I have two stories for you on this video. The first one is about three emerging housing markets and the reason that they will become emerging housing markets within the next 4 years. And that is because of an energy source that I've talked about before called lithium. And these three housing markets are in the same state. They are in Arkansas, and they are El Dorado, Louisville, and Texarkana, which is in Texas, but it is on the border of Texas and Arkansas, hence Texarkana. But it's within the scope of the energy resource that I'll be talking about, and the reason that these towns are going to be so popular within the next coming years. So ExxonMobil is drilling its first lithium well in Arkansas, aiming to be the leading supplier for electric vehicles by 2030. Work has begun for the company's first phase in North America lithium production in southwest Arkansas, an area known to hold significant lithium deposits. The product offered will be branded as Mobil Lithium, building on the rich history of a deep technical partnership between Mobil and the automotive industry. Production is planned to start in 2027. It could process as much as 100,000 metric tons of the material annually. That's about 15% of what the world produced in 2022. Lithium and other minerals such as cobalt, nickel, and silicon are essential to producing solar panels, wind turbines, and the batteries that power electric vehicles, most importantly. Right now, the vast majority of these critical minerals come from Argentina, Australia, Chile, the Dominican Republic of Congo, and, you guessed it, China. The towns of El Dorado, Louisville, and Texarkana sit directly on top of the Smackover Formation, which is an extensive, porous, and permeable limestone aquifer that hosts vast volumes of rich mineral brine and could experience an economic boom with the presence of industry professionals and secondary services. I've already talked about lithium several times in previous videos, how it's critical to the production of batteries, mostly car batteries, and how this will be essential to getting those prices down, which are really cost prohibitive for the majority of American consumers. You have to replace this car battery every 10 to 15 years. They're $20,000 a battery. Most people just don't have the money. But if American producers can tap this resource in the Smackover Formation in southwest Arkansas, as well as extending into Texas, Alabama, and Mississippi, and I'll put it up here on the screen so you can see the map. You can see how big this formation is. It's just a massive deposit of lithium that is right under our noses. If producers can tap this and extract it, the price of lithium could go way down significantly and make production of electric batteries more affordable. That, in conjunction with expanding the infrastructure, would make electric vehicles a much more tenable, sustainable solution to fossil fuel vehicles. And I think that more American consumers could actually get on board. And so these are three towns that you will want to keep your eyes on in the next 4 years. Because if it starts going into production in 2027, people are going to start moving to these towns, and they're very affordable. They are within my range of properties that I share in my Get Ahead videos. They all have PIRs, price to income ratios, of under 4. And so that means that you can buy a house cash with 4 years of your income, as opposed to San Francisco, which is at a 15 or something like that. It takes 15 years of your income to buy a house there. In these towns, it's 3 or 4. It's incredibly affordable. So these are three towns: El Dorado, Louisville, and Texarkana, as well as some other towns in Alabama and Mississippi that I will continue to bring to you that sit right on top of this Smackover Formation that will no doubt attract industry professionals and secondary industries when there will be a high volume of lithium extraction going on in this region. The second story is about China trying to fix its economy, but Trump derailing those plans. And this article is out of the BBC, and it reads: China has unveiled its new measures aimed at boosting its flagging economy as it braces for a second Donald Trump presidency. The country plans to tackle tens of billions of dollars of local government debt to prevent it being a drag on growth. Trump won the US election on a platform that promised steep import taxes, including tariffs as high as 60% on Chinese goods. His victory is now likely to hinder Xi Jinping's plans to transform the country into a technological powerhouse and further strain relations between the world's two biggest economies. A property slump, rising government debt and unemployment, and a low consumption have slowed down Chinese growth since the pandemic. The stakes are higher than ever for the latest standing announcement from the Standing Committee on the National People's Congress, the executive body of China's legislature. During his first term in office, Trump hit Chinese goods with tariffs of as much as 25%. China analyst Bill Bishop says Trump should be taken at his word about his new tariff plans. I think we should believe that he means it when he talks about tariffs, that he sees China as having reneged on his trade deal, and that he thinks China and COVID cost him the 2020 election. The pressure from Washington did not ease after Trump left the White House in 2021. And here's something that a lot of people may not know, and that is that the Biden administration kept the measures in place and in some cases widened them. It looks like Trump isn't the only tariff hawk in the room. While the first wave of Trump tariffs were painful for China, the country is now in a much more vulnerable position. And my question is that why wouldn't China just raise prices in response to American tariffs if it's in such a vulnerable position? Something else must be at play. The economy has been struggling to return to pre pandemic levels of growth since abruptly abandoning its tight COVID restrictions 2 years ago. Instead of delivering a widely expected fast paced recovery, China became a regular source of disappointing economic news. Even before Trump's election victory and after China began rolling out measures to support its economy in September, the International Monetary Fund, the IMF, lowered its annual growth target for the country. The IMF now expects the Chinese economy to expand by 4.8% in 2024 at the lower end of Beijing's about 5% target. Next year, it projects China's annual growth rate will drop further to 4.5%. Things are not looking good for the Chinese economy. The latest plan involves using an additional 6 trillion yuan from now until 2026 to bail out local governments which have piled up unsustainable levels of debt. China risks falling into the type of decades long stagnation that Japan endured after a stock and property bubble burst in the 1990s. To avoid that fate, he says China should draw on untapped consumer demand and move away from the export and investment led growth. That would not only encourage more sustainable growth, but also lower trade tensions and China's vulnerability to external shocks. This more robust economic model could help China fend off the kind of threats posed by Trump's return to power. So it sounds to me like China sees some threats on the horizon that they need to guard against. They don't sound like this impervious giant that can't be affected. They are very vulnerable to the United States trade policies, unlike what some of my critics would have you think. But China, which has long been the world's factory for low cost goods, is trying to replicate that success with high tech exports. It is already a leader in solar panels, electric vehicles, and lithium ion batteries. Going back to the first story, lithium is an up and coming resource that countries will be mining and producing as fast as they can. According to the International Energy Agency, China now accounts for at least 80% of solar panel production. It is also the biggest maker of EVs and the batteries that power them. The IEA last year said that China's investments in clean energy accounted for a third of the world's total as the country continued to show remarkable progress in adding renewable capacity. There is an overall effort to support high tech manufacturing in China, said Dave Lubin, a senior research fellow at London based think tank Chatham House. This has been very successful. Exports of electric vehicles, lithium ion batteries, and solar panels jumped 30% in 2023. Gee, I wonder how they got their production and their ability to export those valuable lithium ion batteries to America. I wonder what high level relationship in the government they could have leveraged to make that happen. I wonder. And this helped them to surpass 1 trillion yuan for the first time as China continued to strengthen its global dominance in each of those industries. That export growth has helped soften the blow to China's economy of the ongoing property crisis. And that export growth has helped to soften the blow to China's economy of the ongoing property crisis. So China is in a position where they are robbing Peter to pay Paul. Their real estate market is crumbling, so they are having to turn to these lithium exports to bolster their economy. China's overall capacity will increase, there's no doubt about it. They have other sources of growth. But along with these increased exports, there has been a rise in resistance from Western countries, not just the US. Just last month, the European Union increased tariffs on Chinese built EVs to as much as 45%. So it's not just America who's increasing taxes. This isn't just a Trumpian idea. This is the EU that we're talking about who is increasing tariffs on China. So it's not just Trump that people can criticize about tariffs. The problem right now is that large recipients of those goods, including Europe and the US, are increasingly reluctant to receive them because there's an imbalance in trade with not just the US and China, but Europe and China. And they are sick of it also. Today, as Trump is set to head back to the Oval Office with a pledge to hammer Chinese imports, Beijing will have to ask itself whether its latest measures to boost its slowing economy will be enough. And here is where the rubber meets the roads, and this is something that all of my critics should pay attention to. China knows that if they raise their prices in retaliation against American tariffs and importing companies pass those costs on to the consumer, it will begin to destroy demand. And right now, consumers are being pushed to the brink. Everyone is cutting back just so that they can afford the basics. Inventory is backing up in American stores. According to marketplace.org, the Logistics Manager Index found that inventory levels picked up in August after contracting through the summer. Retailers are returning to where things are showing up in the store right before we need them. And this is also called just-in-time inventory management. Inventory levels that surged during the pandemic are down, and companies are reluctant to build new stockpiles because the consumer is tightening their belts and inventory is sitting on the shelves longer. And this is going on with everything, everywhere. Look at the car market. Cars are sitting on their lots for 30, 60, 90 days. Car dealerships are sending their inventories back to auction because they can't sell them right now. And one of these car dealers even sold a woman a car with a 35-year term. 35 years. And I don't think it's just because of the woman's credit score. I bet the dealer is desperate to move inventory. So they are spreading these loan terms out as far as they can just to move inventory. And returning to inventory managers, this new strategy can help retailers ensure that they don't order too much. China benefited during the pandemic by inventory managers since 2021 when retailers ordered inventory a lot earlier in the year since supply chains were congested. Then, over the next couple of years, retailers ordered less inventory altogether since they had built up so much. So they had so much inventory that they had ordered already. These huge inventory profits that China got, these big lump sums from these big orders. So China was flush with cash. That's not happening anymore. Retailers have plenty of inventory. They are not ordering as much, and China is not seeing that income like they did during the pandemic. And China needs customers for their cars and their batteries and their coffee makers. But China won't get customers if they raise their prices. So not only is China facing pressure from the EU and the US in the forms of tariffs to level the playing field, they're running up against a broke American consumer. And to top it off, they now have competition in the lithium market. So for all this talk about Trump's tariffs backfiring, hurting the American consumer with raising prices that the importing companies are going to pass on, it is more likely than not that that will not happen because China knows that they need customers. And if they raise their prices too much, it will destroy demand. They won't have anyone to buy their stuff, and they'll be even broker. They will go into bankruptcy. So I do not think that China will raise their prices too much. They are not talking like a country in a position of strength, like a country that's in control. They are already trying to negotiate with Trump and trying to talk him off the ledge of tariffs. So China is not the power player in this relationship, especially because they're under pressure from the EU, not just the United States. They have a global customer that will not tolerate prices at a certain level, and China will go broke if they try to do it. So, on that note, I want to thank everyone for continuing to tune in. Thank you to all of my subscribers. I really appreciate you guys. And if you're new to this channel, thanks for watching. Remember to like, subscribe, comment below, share this with someone else, and don't give up when you can get ahead.